To order. Commissioners, can I get started with approval of our minutes from our last meeting, which occurred on March 14th?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. Any questions or comments?
None, I don't have any.
All right, we'll go ahead and move forward then. I should say all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries. All right, Commissioners, we have 4 items up for discussion today. And our very first one is an update on the Factory Yards redevelopment project overview. So we're really excited to have this project move forward. I had the joy of going over there and getting a great tour just last week. So it was good to actually walk the space and see the incredible potential. And we're glad to have all of you here today. So we'll get started today with Mr. Klooster, and then we'll turn it over and invite the developers up to share.
Actually, Mayor, I'd like to make some opening comments before we move into the presentation, if that's
All right.
okay. So this project, as he prepares the PowerPoint, I want to point out, and I'm glad that we got notice that you were able to tour the site on Friday. I know that Commissioner Robbins and Commissioner O'Connor have also had communications and visits with the developer. I want to recognize the development team as well, you know, as we talked about expanding our reach in terms of development partners into the city of Grand Rapids. And they're a new development team that's made their way into the city and looking and has identified this as an important development project and opportunity for the city of Grand Rapids and the demand that we have in mixed-use development. And this is a success of our efforts to attract quality development partners across the state and across the country. And so this project today is a culmination of that, but also the importance of finding the right partner to have important engagement with neighborhood association, business association, internal and external stakeholders that are important to getting the buy-in and support for this project. I will also want to commend the development team for coming along with us step by step, and also our development team of Jessica and Jono, working with them on a regular basis in consulting with them really about how to leverage our economic development programs to the greatest extent, including this transformational brownfield plan, transformational brownfield opportunity that we have in front of us. And this is an important part of working through with the development team, and hopefully they had a positive experience and they can share their thoughts on that. But most importantly, again, this is a very complex but very important redevelopment project for this area of our city. And the density is important, the tools we're using, and the outcomes that we have from the material to the engagement all the way down to affordability elements that we're building into this project. All things that I think are important and speak directly to the things that we heard today in our Committee of the Whole presentation as it relates to housing needs assessments and how we're utilizing our tools to address the need in our community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Klooster and the rest of the development team.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gracia. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time up here going over this project at a high level. I'm going to talk a little bit about the incentives that we're proposing to be leveraged for this development and how we plan to use those to achieve some important outcomes. I'm also going to ask our partners from Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association to come up and reflect on their experience so far with the development team, and then I will bring up the development team sitting behind me here, Scott, Dennis, and Ben, who you'll hear from towards the end. So Factory Yards is the name for this development. It's a large-scale development on the southwest side in the First Ward and in the neighborhoods of focus. This I'm going to just leave it on this site plan here for a while, and just at a high level, give you an overview here. So the right side of your screen is north, the south side, or the left side of your screen is south. So flip this 90 degrees to the left, and you'll be oriented. The H there is just south of the railroad tracks on Godfrey Avenue, just south of Market. That would be maybe known to some as the Tontin site, where Tontin just relocated from. And then the rest of it basically would maybe be known to some as the McInerney building. Altogether, current state, it's about 640,000 square feet, very large property. And when completed, there will be less building. There will be some demolition, which will be described, but they'll end up just under 500,000 square feet probably. So reusing about 80% of the building. You can see some of the components listed here, and again, the development team will get into more detail about those. But overall, through the various components, this is about a $150 million investment. It will result in about 475 residential units and a significant amount of commercial space, both retail and office, and then other site improvements and amenities, which again, I'll let the development team get into in more detail. You may have seen this, or you have seen this this project in various communications over the last couple months. It's been through Planning Commission a couple times. Not everything here can be built under the current zoning, so I want to highlight that there could be other zoning requests depending on the final stage, final uses. There is, you'll see in the Development Center report, a special land use application pending for parts of the project. So we're coming a little bit before we normally would with this project, given the size and scale and scope. And frankly, because generally the May Economic Development Project team is sometimes canceled in favor of the budget discussion. So we want to get out in front of this and be transparent and have as much information out at this time as we can. So I'll leave the development there maybe for a moment and for the development team to spend more time on. But I do want to talk a little bit about transformational brownfield because that is an incentive that is proposed for this project. You're all very familiar with the traditional brownfield program and projects that we bring to you on a regular basis. There's a lot of similarity and a few key differences, obviously. For a project to meet the qualifications for transformational brownfield in the city of Grand Rapids, and it's based on population of the community where the project's located, but it has to be a $100 million investment. So this project meets that threshold. The city will also be required to designate this as a transformational project, and that means that it's expected to have a transformational impact on economic development and community revitalization for the particular location where it's being proposed. You're all very familiar with Godfrey Corridor. It's had various uses over time, long history, and while it's been used for certain sort of creative uses more recently, some maker spaces and things like that, it's definitely been underutilized, 650,000 square feet here. Obviously, we can do a lot more with 650,000 square feet than has been done in the recent past. Property does have to be a brownfield property. This is, to nobody's surprise, this is contaminated property over here. And it must contain a mix of uses, including retail, office, residential, and/or hotel. So that's the qualification criteria that makes transformational brownfield a little bit unique. And then the additional incentive is really, there's two components to it. So transformational brownfields have additional revenue streams and additional eligible activities. So with brownfield projects that you've approved over the years, you're familiar with the eligible activities, including environmental site assessment and cleanup, site preparation, demolition, lead and asbestos abatement, et cetera. And those costs would be reimbursed using tax increment revenues. And tax increment revenues are generally the property taxes that do not exist prior to the project and are generated only by the project. So for transformational brownfield, eligible activities are expanded to include renovation, repurposing, and construction of the building, largely the entire project cost. The revenue streams are expanded beyond the property tax increment revenues, and they include state income tax revenues as well in various forms. So they include the income taxes that would be paid by the individuals constructing the project, the income taxes of the individuals working at the project when it's complete, and the income taxes of those living at the project when it's complete. So all of those additional revenues are state income taxes and not associated with city revenues. The local component, the local participation in the brownfield plan remains the same. It would be the local property taxes generated by this development. So for this project, I mentioned it's about $150 million overall. With current cost estimates, the traditional brownfield eligible expenses, so those demolition, environmental cleanup, lead and asbestos, site preparation type activities, would be about $20 million for this project. If we add in the transformational brownfield eligible activities, it's about $120 million. That's just the maximum amount of eligible activities. It is not the number that's being proposed for reimbursement. That will be based on underwriting, which is ongoing, and that number is not known at this time. The transformational brownfield program does allow us to leverage the additional incentive to achieve some additional objectives here. Early on, working with the development team, this is a market-driven project, and because of the transformational brownfield revenues and the opportunity to increase the amount of income tax increment revenues that could be used to pay for eligible costs, we started a conversation early on with them about mixed income housing at this project. And so there's about 475 units overall, as I mentioned, across the whole project. And we're working towards a goal of providing 10% of those units to households earning no more than 60% of the area median income, and 10% of the units to households earning no more than 80% of the area median income. That's an agreement that needs detail put to it. What we do know at this time is that our priority is that those units are not all just one type, that they're spread across the studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, and so that there are units of each type at the various price points, and that affordability would be maintained through the duration of the transformational brownfield, which would be a minimum of 20 years. We've begun discussions, obviously, had a lot of discussions with the development team, bringing in their property management group too that has a lot of experience managing tax credit development, affordable housing, so they're well versed in how we can go about doing this. The additional revenues also allow us and the development team to explore some sustainability elements that might otherwise be cost prohibitive. And I'll let them talk a little bit more about those, but I think there's some great opportunities there. Another thing we always talk to you about for the last couple of years is our inclusion plan and the effort to provide an enhanced level of opportunity in the construction of this very significant project to minority-owned, women-owned, and micro-local subcontractors. Wolverine Building Group is the general contractor for this project. They have put together a very good inclusion plan, and very good meaning I've been impressed comparing it to previous ones that we've had at the level of detail and description of the efforts that they're going to undertake to achieve these goals. There's a lot of opportunity here, and we've got an initial inclusion plan for the first component of this project. It's going to be built over time, and the cost of the initial phase, the construction cost, is about $90 million. And Wolverine's set aspirational goals of about $8 million of that for minority-owned subcontractors, $1.8 million for women-owned subcontractors, and $2.7 for micro-local, for a total of $12.6 or 14% of the overall development. And although we don't have the full $150 million project described yet, the intention is that future components would come in with a similar goal. However, because some of this is new construction and some is demolition, the particular opportunities might look a little bit different as the components come together. So I'm going to stop there with my overview, and I'm going to ask Amy Brower, the Executive Director of Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association, and Reggie Smith, her board chair, to come up and to reflect on their experience so far in the engagement for this project and their expectations going forward as well. And then after that, I'll have Dennis come up, Dennis Griffin. Maybe I'll have all of you come up to introduce yourselves, and then Dennis can walk through some more details of the project.
Hi, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Amy Brower, Director of the Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak about our experience working with this development team. RPNA has been in contact with Mr. Griffin for a couple of years now, but in August of last year, he made the connection and introduced us to the new development team. We reconvened again in February with our RPNA development committee so that we could be briefed on the Factory Yards project. I don't believe it had that name prior in our prior communications and engagement with them. So it was really great to get that update. Our development committee was really generally quite positive about how they're going about approaching this project. From our conversations, it really came across that their goal is to create a space where people of all socioeconomic levels can have a high quality of life through all the different elements of the project. There is also an appreciation for their efforts to achieve their vision or work towards the vision that they have, but also explore alternative ways to achieve their vision rather than changing that vision, and especially in regards to the planning around mixed income housing. Really appreciative of that, given that that site may not qualify for some of the more traditional affordable housing aspects, that they are willing to explore some alternatives to be able to make that happen. Also in terms of some of the commercial space for in the food court, proposed food court hall area. So really RPNA's expectations, or that we've communicated, which I think have been honored as over these last few months, is to be kept informed on ways that we can continue to speak into the project, allowing us or incorporating us in advocating for the amenities to be available for everyone. There's lots of pieces of this project so that the neighborhood in general can also be a part of some of the resources that will be there, support connections to local entrepreneurs, and then also just update us if there's roadblocks that they run into so that we can continue to keep the neighborhood informed. And just an example of how this has kind of been moving forward also is our most recent paper newsletter included an article with a summary of the project plans, and there's been conversation about that happening, recurring, so that we can continue to make sure the neighborhood is informed and is aware of what's happening there. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've been the Neighborhood Association president for almost 30 years. And this is one of the few that has come to us really transparent, really wanting to be involved, having the community involved, having the community voice involved, having the community vote involved. And so when they came to us, I was really excited about all the partners that were a part of this, how they were really bending over backwards to make sure that this project, which is probably the largest one in Roosevelt Park's history, and which is one of three projects that are going on right now, if you include the old Israel building and the Flower Hill one, which is right in front of my house. And we are just excited about this opportunity that people can also, that it is across the board, that people from mixed incomes can be a part of this project, and that they're willing to have us speak into it. And so, before becoming after, as opposed to being afterwards, which a lot of developers have done in the past, and we had to check them. And so I'm really excited about this project, and we are behind it. And as long as things are going well, and that the community is involved in this, we will speak very favorably. And so thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Reggie. It's good to see you. Thank you both for everything you've done in the neighborhood. It's been really fun to see some of your vision come to life, and just really appreciate your hard work. All right, Dennis, Mr. Dennis Griffin, you want to tell us about this?
Sure. I'm Dennis Griffin with 655 Godfrey LLC. I'd like to introduce my development partners, Scott Magaluk and Ben Smith. We have a lot to talk about. We'll be concise as we can, but it's exciting, so if we ramble a little bit, it's because of our excitement.
I'll try to keep you on task.
Yes.
So we have 2 other items on our agenda, even though we're really excited about this one.
Yeah, and we're going to break it up a little bit into the things we want to speak of. So the first thing is just a real quick history on this project and how my involvement has come to originally to be, and then how my partners are involved. In 2017, my development group purchased a number of properties, which was a former GRL portfolio, and it was a 1980s tenant in common syndicate. So a bunch of absentee owners that at the time literally were done with their business career, and several had passed. So we purchased the former Sly Furniture Building, 446 Granville, 655 Godfrey, which is now Factory Yards, the Keeler Brass Building, which was a different owner, 1111 Godfrey, and also in Wyoming, 903 Chicago, and the old Kelvinator plant. It was a lot, but it was really, as a developer, a dream come true. So we had very quick and engaged development plans on it. A lot of things happened over those few years. We'll get back to some of the things that are themes that permeate it. Ultimately, we stabilized a couple properties and sold them to other developers. We never had the capacity to do all of them, literally physically and human possibility. So we've been trying to lay them off to developers that have like minds to preserve the buildings the best they can and preserve actually the tenancies as locally as possible. That's very important to us. So that's kind of the history of the project. And during that time frame, that's when I met Jono and his team and the mayor and others. Jeremiah came a little bit later. But I have to say that the experience I've had in Grand Rapids is tremendous. The level of candor, trust, and patience, those are some 3 core developments that we use in our development now. Trust, patience, and candor, any way you put it, it equals, confidence and consensus. This is a consensus project, and we're just, nothing's been sugar-coated, but we have appropriate encouragement, we have appropriate shift this way, you should be speaking with these folks. Never overwhelming, but never easy. It's always challenging. It's a challenging business, it's a challenging economy, it's challenging personalities. So we can't say enough about how this process with the city has been synchronized, and the level of trust and candor and patience between the city and the state, the entities that we're engaging with, is really quite tremendous, and it's awe-inspiring. They know one another, they trust one another, but they challenge one another. Everything is just not, rose-colored glasses. Our engagement process, which has made me a better developer. I was early on and coached really with Jono early on. And I've done the best I can to impart those engagement processes with Scott and Ben. And it's an honest approach. It's something I hadn't been through appropriately, but honestly, it's made me a better and stronger developer, and I'm never going to change my ways. The people we've known to become to know and become our friends and we care about, Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association for sure, again, they challenge us, and we communicate very well. Tim Roz and the Right Place have been incredible with us. Again, they guide us in some of the things that are new to them, like the tech initiative. We've pivoted a little bit our design style. Can we help capture tech tenants as a component of Factory Yards? Habitat for Humanity, we met with them very early on. They're stable in the neighborhood. The West Michigan Hispanic Chamber, Guillermo and his crew, they're excited about the neighborhood and some of our ability to use their connections and develop trust from an out-of-town developer into that community is very, very important. The Hispanic Center of West Michigan. And then lastly, but as equally important, our tenants. There's a lot of angst when our tenants see different type of cars, different type of people, consultants walking around, what's going to happen to us? So we're very happy to say that Taunton Lumber, who was in their building, which is in great disrepair, we've successfully relocated them to 955 Godfrey. They've reset into a long-term lease in a modern space, and they're doing much better. Our other tenant, River City Metals, after this meeting, I'm meeting with them. We're working on relocating them into a better space where they can reset for 10 years. There's not much industrial availability, so we're helping them relocate likely into Wyoming, but still close enough for their employees. So that goes back around the trust, patience, and candor. Kind of corny in a way, but it's honest, and that's why I embrace Scott and Ben and the entire team, the entire community, and thank you so far for embracing us. If we're deviating from any of those 3 core items, let us know, and likewise, we will, as you, let you know as well. So, who's up next?
Yeah, I can. Thanks so much for having us today. I can jump in a little bit into just our development style and then the plan for the property. So the original structures were built in the late 1880s. And throughout time, it was in the 40s and the 60s, there was additions added onto the building. And so we're starting with this great asset that's got heritage and character that we're doing our best to preserve every piece that we can. Throughout our site plan, we have to demolish some buildings to make one. You'll notice in Point B, we're calling it our urban plaza that will connect the 3-story building, which was the original structure, and the 5-story building, which was built in the 40s, and some rear buildings in the back that were selectively taken down to make way for green space and parking, but trying to keep unique elements. There's no point on it, but just to the north of the parking deck, there's the original boiler house that I have a postcard from 1915 that shows Stack Command that we're looking to turn that into commercial space and connecting that through a green arcade space connecting to the plaza. So the site will be a mixed-use concept with about 475 residential units and 150,000 feet of commercial space. And the commercial space will be a mix of traditional retail space, a 22,000 square foot food hall, which will have, right now it's programmed to have 11 vendors, some hot food, some cold food, a bar in the space, and then also an event space to host public and private events. And that will be connected to the plaza, which is in between the 2 buildings. That leads directly across the street to Roberto Clemente Park. So we're hoping to be able to be a great connector for the neighborhood into that space and be welcoming to all those different uses. One thing we are planning in Section I, it's a single-story addition that was added on in the 60s that's more raw industrial space that we're trying to preserve as much as we can, keep building materials out of landfills, and we're looking at that space of being a climate-controlled self-storage, which will help our apartment residents, in smaller units, be able to store goods as well as the neighborhood. And then at the south end of the site, we're contemplating a new ground-up construction 85-unit building that will have its own private parking area that will be a later component after the main site. I touched on the food hall. Yeah, so Ben, if you want to come up.
Morning, thank you. Wanted to echo what Dennis said as well about just the support we've received from everyone at the city, MEDC. We've had such a great experience. Very appreciative of Mackenzie and her team, and Jono and Jess and everyone. So thank you again. Just a real quick kind of touch point on some of the sustainability elements of this. Obviously, it's a brownfield site. It's important to us to redevelop this in a way that honors the industrial past, but also includes some sustainable elements. And I think by virtue of the fact that this is an adaptive reuse project, Scott mentioned we're keeping building materials out of landfills. 77% of the building will be preserved. The portion that's not being preserved is being intentionally demolished to create an outdoor green space public area. We felt that was important. We're exploring concepts like solar panels, geothermal, different green building elements that are going to frankly benefit the project in a lot of different ways. So that's just something to add to sort of the project overview. We're looking at is very integrated with the park across the street, with the Oxford Trail. We purchased several former rail easements that give us direct connectivity from our site to the Oxford Trail. So we're going to plan to create an amenity from that. And Jono did a great job of summarizing the transformational brownfield, but I wanted to just from the developer standpoint touch on why it's so important. And I don't think it's news to anyone that construction costs have gone significantly up year over year for the past several years. Even from the time we first started contemplating this project, interest rates have doubled. So the cost of debt is much greater. And as we've all experienced, going to get a sandwich or go to a movie, everything costs more money. So it costs more money to mow the lawn, it costs more money to plow the snow, to buy supplies. So it's just really expensive to develop and run these buildings. And the transformational brownfield program is a very important tool to fill those gaps, because you can't, rent can only go up so much, and costs and interest rates don't always align. And so this tool allows us to fill that gap as a developer and create a really special project. So we're excited. We thank you again. We're still working hard and diligently with the city and the MEDC and the team, but we're hoping that we can get to a point where we can start construction later this year.
Yeah,
So,
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'll scroll through some pictures here too while you ask your questions, but I will just kind of wrap it up by saying although as you can tell, we've been working on this project for some time with the development team and with community partners, we don't have any applications at this point for this project, although we do expect to obviously receive a transformational brownfield application, as well as an obsolete property rehabilitation exemption application for sort of the 5-story, which is the A and D there building, and then the 3-story that runs the length of Godfrey there. Those have been designated as functionally obsolete. So we do expect to get those applications. And then I'll also say that, again, there are other approvals that will be required for this to be built. For the self-storage, for example, requires special land use, so that we'll have to go through the appropriate process before that can become reality. So there's a lot to do and a lot to evaluate yet, but we do at this point hope to be able to bring a brownfield. In this instance, it would be a combined transformational brownfield work plan to our brownfield authority. At the earliest would be in May at this point, and then it would follow the normal process after that, coming to City Commission, holding a public hearing and needing to be approved by the City Commission, both the plan itself, but then also the designation of the project as a transformational brownfield project. So I'll scroll through some pictures, but I'm sure there will be questions. So we'll stop the presentation there.
All right, I will turn to my colleagues. I'll start with 2 things. One's a statement and a question. I'll also add my thanks to The Right Place and all of their great work and partnership that they do with us here in the city. So I think I let you know this on Friday, but I'll say it again. At our last DGRI meeting, we talked about an update on the trail work, and we're really excited about the potential of the Oxford Trail and really looking at connectivity in that neighborhood and along the river and connecting the west side. So really excited about the potential with the trail system and having a safe, non-motorized trail for the neighborhood and connecting the neighborhood. And I'm hopeful to see that move forward really quickly, knowing that we have some funds allocated from the state for trails. And then secondly, I know I asked about this when I was there last week as well, and not that you need to give an answer, but I just want to keep it on everyone's radar. So when I was there last week, I'm well aware that we still have work to do on the reconstruction of the street there on Godfrey. We did a portion of that, but we still have more work to do, and it runs right in front of your development. And so I want to make sure that the city is coming alongside and working together so that you don't get in your building and then have to deal with a complete street closure. So hopefully we'll be able to align our efforts around that and really come alongside and look at timing that works for both you and the work that we need to do in the street. I was really glad I was able to see it. It's one thing to see pictures. I can tell you it's not the same when you're walking through. It's a huge site. I think many of us drive by it all the time, but to see the potential that is there is really incredible. So thank you for your vision. We're glad to have you here in our community. I'm sure people on the southeast side appreciate you, but I think we appreciate you more, so we're glad to have you here. So I'll turn to my colleagues. I'll start here with Commissioner Robbins, since it's his district over there, and I know you're familiar with the project as well, and then I'll turn to Commissioner Sassi, who serves on our Brownfield Development Authority.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add my thanks as well. I know I got to come see the place a few weeks or months back and get some one-on-one conversation too, and I just appreciate the way that you are going about this project. I know we talked about even the smallest details of incorporating maybe some of the artifacts that you find in the basement from decades past into the design, and I think things like that and just honoring the past of this neighborhood and of this building go a really long way in our community. And also, I just wanted to say thanks to RPNA too. I know we were just talking during the committee the whole about, you can't be pro affordable housing and you can't be anti-change at the same time. They have to find some way to coexist. And so I appreciate you all engaging and just being open to change and open to newness, especially in this area. I'm excited about the project and I look forward to seeing the result of it. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Sassi?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I was just envying you both, because I'm like, if I think about this block, I'm sure the scale seems really, I don't want to say overwhelming, but I'm looking at it, and so I imagine I have to walk through it myself to kind of get a sense of what it looks like, and you're doing some live looking at it right now. Some interesting street views. So thanks for the overview. I just have two questions, because it's been clear that you've done a lot of the due diligence, obviously with folks in the neighborhood, other organizations, while they might not be necessarily situated there or a little bit further away, they certainly have a strong connection point to the neighborhood. I think about GRCC down the street, I think still a very affordable part of our city where a lot of individuals live. Always kind of looking at those pieces. So my questions are, can you share more about the food hall, and I see in here it says that there is a tentatively secured operator, but then I also heard Ms. Brower talk about some opportunities for entrepreneurs, so I'm interested in that, just if you could expand more on that piece. And then, Jono, you talked about the inclusion plan. I think, Wolverine Building Group is no stranger to understanding the targets and goals that we have. It seems like these are pretty good and pretty on target and able to be achievable. But then I do see, you've got the different pieces for the construction professional services. So I'm guessing there's only one for WBE. So if you could talk a little bit about that, I'm assuming in your decision-making process, you can share that. So those are my two questions about this project. Thanks.
Sure. And I can expand a little bit more on the food hall. So the food hall, the first day that Scott and Ben toured the project together with me, Scott looked at the first floor of the 5-story and said, "This reminds me of a building I visited in Lisbon." It was an activated food hall. And like, okay, first, where's Lisbon? I had to process real quickly. But we expanded on that relatively quickly. We looked at the downtown market, which is not a food hall. So the food hall in this instance is the developer establishes the entire periphery of the space, all the infrastructure, the parking, the common areas, and our value proposition to our clients, our vendors, is they get a personalized space within the food hall, and our target goal is a $20,000 to $40,000 investment from them to establish their brand, individual brand within our space. And we've spent so much time with our operator, and he's actually coached us quite a bit. He's like, this is a hyper-local activity. We're going to come in 12, 15 months before you open, and we're going to put our boots on the ground, and we're going to find the appropriate people to get into your space. And it's a mix of having, different specialty food items, so there's no crossover, no cannibalization. If there's a taco vendor, the next person doesn't do tacos. If there's a sushi vendor, another sushi. Or if it's the different nationalities that are in our neighborhood now, those folks would be appropriately approached. There's no forcing, no threat. And I find it especially exciting because we're witnessing a lot of empty restaurants and a lot of attrition. And It keeps a lot of dreams alive, the way that Jeremy and Natalie describe it to us. People that have a lot of talent but can't keep resourced can come in and get the burden lifted off them. They don't have to worry about hiring a snowplow. They don't have to worry about cleaning. Utilities are organized for them. So that's something where we believe we can have a dynamic, eclectic mix of uses at personalized space with people want to establish themselves here and stay. They want to establish themselves here and then go a single bricks and mortar, or bricks and mortar can come back into our space and perpetuate themselves. Very hyperlocal. We also have heard from the community. I was with Guillermo earlier today. He's like, we need a coffee shop in the neighborhood, and that's part of, Mud Penny is there. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing, but it's not necessarily a neighborhood space. So our bodega concept includes a coffee space and a convenience store, which is not in that location. So hopefully that answers kind of where the food hall is heading.
Yeah, can you share with me how many operators, or you have an operator, then how many individuals would be able to opt into that? And then what are some of the lease agreement rate or years would look like? Because you'd mentioned,
Sure.
So I don't know if it's necessarily intended to be incubation, or do you want it to be a little bit of incubation? So if you could share some of those
Sure.
time lengths.
Our current program has 11 vendors. A handful of those, a proportion that, I don't know the exact proportion, are hot food vendors, which are fully ventilated, and up to MDARD and food grade specs, and the rest of them are a combination of cold vendors. And then we have the bodega, which is the anchor convenience store and coffee shop. There are 2 spaces that are engaged for pop-up vendors. Okay. And the way the arrangement works with our vendors is there's a kind of a coached, negotiated minimum sales estimate from that vendor. And then during the process, when they conduct a sale, then the revenue is split between the food hall and the vendor at that point. So it's a real-time engagement. As long as the revenue is met and the general kind of rules of community are met, the vendor is there for good. That's the arrangement. So a vendor can establish themselves in the food hall and be there for as long as they like.
So it wouldn't be like typical lease agreements for individual.
I can't speak to the exact document.
Okay.
They're more of a license agreement.
Okay. I think that would just be helpful to know, because I think we see, to your point, we get people who go into a space, maybe they get locked in, but then it's kind of like this housing market that we've been talking about. People aren't able to move to the next level because they might be in maybe this 5-year lease that is going to be unrealistic for them after a certain amount of time. So I just want to get a sense of how that fits into our larger, small business, needs and settings. And then, but it's good to know that mixture. That's helpful to understand, so I appreciate that. So thanks for the detail.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm going to move us along if there aren't any more questions about this project. We have 2 more items, and I'm going to try to keep those probably to a 10-minute update. Commissioners, any final thoughts? Obviously, there's still work to be done, and it'll come back before Economic Development Project Team, hopefully in May. So thank you all for being here and for your work, and we'll be eager to see this move forward. And again, thanks to the Neighborhood Association, everything that you do, and to our partners at The Right Place.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, next I'm going to invite up our partners at the Urban League of West Michigan and Grand Rapids African American Task Force and the Michigan Block Expo. We have been partnering with them to organize the African American Business Voice in Grand Rapids. And I think I'll actually turn this over to City Manager to kick off, since he has really spearheaded a lot of these conversations and has been a part of really encouraging this effort over the past year. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank our Economic Development Office for helping us recognize the opportunity to better communicate with our business community. I think we have a greater Chamber of Commerce that represents a lot of the businesses at large. We have a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce where we really hear a lot of voices from our Latino community. But when it comes to the African American business community, there are just very different ways of engaging, and it's sometimes it's been challenging, and so we wanted to see how we could better improve that level of engagement. And I think Mr. Gracia is going to take it from here.
Yes, and sake of time, Mayor, I'm going to introduce Eric Brown. He's the president and CEO of the Urban League of West Michigan. But again, this has been an ongoing effort, and we are pleased with the progress made to date, and we understand, most importantly, the timeline that we're working under here to help get this work completed by the end of this fiscal year, so that we can present our recommendations and our path forward in early, early July or August, something in that time frame. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Brown to provide us an update of where his work has taken us to date.
All right, welcome, Mr. Brown. Good to see you. Appreciate all your partnership and hard work over there at the Urban League. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and Mr. Gracia and Mr. Washington. In the sake of the time, so that we can take our 40 minutes as well.
I know, sorry. We have 2 o'clock, and I know the 3 of us need a break.
No, I'm completely fine with that. So let me just jump right in. So yeah, next slide, please, Asante. Oh. Hey, how about that? A real quick agenda. Again, for the sake of time, these are only going to be a couple minutes on each slide, if that. Give you guys a chance for question and answer at the end. And most importantly, just importantly, I want you to hear from the gentleman I have with me today as well. We're going to just talk a little bit, real briefly, about the origin, the current state, and then moving forward in the future state as it relates to what Mr. Washington talked about as far as the communication engagement with Black businesses or African American businesses here in the city. So the current state of affairs is, based on decades of disinvestment and undevelopment, the Black business voice is fragmented and somewhat disjointed. There seems to be a lack of a comprehensive list of current businesses for those that are interested in engaging in business to engage with. To the point of, even in the previous presentation, 2 ethnic organizations were mentioned as far as collaborating with, and there was none that was mentioned about the Black community. Not a knock, just an observation of why this effort is important. The team is led by, and you guys mentioned, I don't have my collaborators here with me, Mrs. Gant Jordan and Mr. Rodney Brown from the Grand Rapids African American Task Force and Systems Development. They've entrusted me to take care of this on today, so hopefully I will satisfy that. But the team is led by Urban League and myself, along with those 2 other organizations, as well as, it was mentioned, Michigan Black Expo, through the presence of Mr. Ned Andre, who actually leads one of our, as you hear me talk about, one of our work groups in a little bit later in the presentation. On the team, we also have an economic analyst giving us some of his time. He's a professional economic analyst working with this group. We have 2 grassroots additional organizers and facilitators. If I mention their names, you would know who they are and familiar with them, as well as 7, and probably one of the things we're most proud about, and it took us a little bit of a time to get there, but we have 7 GVSU, HBCU, HSI, quite an acronym there, consortium graduate students working on this project with us. So moving forward, what we did is our scope of work with the City of Grand Rapids, it had, I think it was 7 bullet points that were listed there within the scope of work and our engagement. And we distilled that down, that scope of work, into 4 work groups. And I've shared with Mr. Gracia our work plan that those 4 work groups will be doing over the next few months. And he has the detail of that. But the first work group is engagement plan. So one of the penultimate objectives for our plan is to have an engagement plan where the city and other interested parties would have a means of engaging with the Black business community in Grand Rapids in a much more efficient and effective manner. The second is a database or list group. We want to establish, and this is where you bring in the young folks and they really make it fun, a living database of Black businesses. When you have what does Alex do? He's a statistician, IT guy, and all that other kind of stuff. And he's like, we got to make this thing livable. We just don't want a stagnant list. And you're absolutely right on. So establish a list of living database of Black businesses in Grand Rapids. So that's the second work group. And then the business development work group. This is to provide a harmonious voice for Black businesses in Grand Rapids. This is where we will engage with, there's a list of a little over a dozen plus people that are part of this, the ecosystem when it comes to black business development, and they're doing bits and pieces here and there. But I'm going to reach out personally to them over the starting this week into next week, and start with a couple of different times to sit down with them, focus groups, whatever you want to call it, strategy meetings, so that we can really lay out who's doing what and how can that best effectively be brought together. And I'll pause right there for a second because a little bit of the conversation got started around the Black Chamber, which for the last several years has been existent, but relatively not doing, I'm trying to think of the right word since this is public. Well, a little bit, they've been in existence, but maybe inactive. Thank you. There we go. They've been inactive over the last several years. I have heard word and communication that they have new officials coming on board and that they have a plan. So they are part of this the group that I'm going to be engagement with. But quite honestly, we're going to continue to move forward. And what I envision coming out of this is more or less like some type of consortium to where there's an agreement and a way of a path forward how we're going to interact with individuals, businesses, as well as the city. And then the other work group is the convenings, events. This is an attempt to just provide ongoing communication between the city and other stakeholders, as well as the black businesses. Future state, UJAMA, or cooperative economics. I mean, if we could just put it into a statement, that's what we're trying to go after here. And a cohesive, efficient, effective, and productive black business voice. We are living, as well as a living list of black-owned businesses in the city. We're aware of the micro local business enterprise list that the city has, so that's part of the list of businesses we'll be reaching out to. So just wanted you guys to know we're aware of that, as well as the several other lists that exist, and we'll combine those lists to have a more comprehensive list. And another thing is we all know how important it is to the community, for our community, for talent attraction to this region. And that's why we were very intentional and wanted to partner with GVSU and their HBCU HSI initiative. So I'm going to pause as I'm real close to the end of my presentation. I got one more bullet, but I just want to pause right now, and I want to invite Javier Gillian, one of our students, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about his story. I will, as he's coming though, I will say that he's part of the first cohort, and he's graduating from Grand Valley later this month, and he's already working in this community. But come on, Javier.
That's awesome. Welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and it's a pleasure to meet all of you. So a little bit about me. My name is Javier Guillen. I am from Georgia. I attended an HBCU known as Fort Valley State University, and I'm a part of the cohort here at Grand Valley State University.
Nice.
As Mr. Brown mentioned, I am going to be the first person to graduate, which is an honor.
Yeah.
And since I've been here, I've actually decided to make Grand Rapids my home. And so I will be
I
staying
think we
here.
should all clap for that. What neighborhood are you going to live in? That's usually what we ask next.
So,
In the city of Grand Rapids. I wish I could make that a requirement.
He's in the city right now.
Okay, good.
I am. While I've been here, it's been an honor to just be connected with the community.
Nice.
And keeping my comments under 1 minute, I will say that everything that Eric said is absolutely right. The black community is in a state of fragmentation. And so seeing as I'll be making this my home for the next couple of years, I think it's important that we begin to do the work to unite the black businesses and communities, so that way we have a voice that can stand here and be heard by you all and continue to push our future forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we support that and have a lot of trust in our partners, including the Urban League, and recognize that unified voice is so essential to moving forward our shared goals as a community. We can only do so much here at the city. And so I'm really grateful that we have this opportunity to get an update on the work that you've been doing. And welcome to Grand Rapids. Yeah.
Thank you. And my final point is we all know that stronger and black business community economy and is good for the black business economy and the overall economy. We're all aware of the reports that show how much that we're missing out in the overall economy as far as from the growth of the economy because of the lack of development within specifically the black business community. We can have the large umbrella of minority business community, but when we distill it down to specifically the black business community, many. I believe one of the latest figures was, I think it's $98 billion that we're missing out on the state level. Obviously, that's not all here, but on the state level. So that's a whole lot of zeros we're missing out because of the undevelopment of the black business community. And yep, with that being said, I'm done, and if we have any questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? All right, okay, thank you so much. We'll look forward to continuing the conversation and identifying ways that we can continue to support.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, thank you. All right, Commissioners, I'm going to take us then to our third update, and this is an update from United Methodist Community House and their project over there at 900 Division Avenue Southeast, Division Avenue South. And I see that we have some partners here from UMCH.
Yep, we'll keep this brief. This is really about the United UMCH project as well as the RAP program overall. You obviously are all familiar with the effort that we undertook to submit a successful application and receive about $9.4 million from the state of Michigan's ARPA allocation. In February, we were able to bring you the grant agreement from the Michigan Strategic Fund, which was the result of about 8 months effort. And we asked you to approve, and you did, 7 sub-grant agreements with the various project development groups. In there was the United Methodist Community House, and the update here is simply that in that agenda item, we represented that those 7 projects would result in 364 total housing units, 328 of which would be affordable. You obviously are well aware of the UMCH project and the various components of that and the work that they've done over time to secure funding. Simply because of the timeline associated with both the RAP funding, the $1.425 million, as well as some other secured funding that they have received for the overall project, they've made a request, and we are proceeding with allocating the city's RAP funding, $1.425 million, to the first component of the project, which does not include housing. So this isn't a change to the overall project. It's just that when the RAP money is invested, when that project's complete, the housing won't exist yet. There will be a future component of the project. So I'll ask Eric Williams, co-CEO of UMCH, and Marcus Rignalda, who's serving as an owner's rep for the project, to come up and give you a little bit more detail on that. But this is, if we think about the resolution that you approved, was a grant agreement with UMCH for $1.425 million. So we don't believe we need a new approval. We're simply communicating here that the RAP funding will be used for a different component of the project.
Okay, great. Welcome. Yeah, if you could fill us in on timeline and overall project, and I know all of us are eager to have that affordable housing project started, so maybe you can give us an update on timeline and even where you are with the capital stack on that.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and it's always good to be with you. First of all, I just want to thank city staff, and they have been incredible to work with, and just a joy. Tell folks when we talk about GR, we talk about them being first cousins, because that's how we sort of connect. So we appreciate all of the staff that have been supportive. We have this project's quite complex. And one of the things we've done is put together, at this point, there are about 20 different funding sources that we have worked diligently to assemble. And each of these funding sources have their own requirements and specifications and things of that nature. And some of them don't play as well with others. And so we find ourselves in a situation we've had to restructure how we put the project together, how we construct the project. And our initial hopes is that we could just do this all at one time. And because of some of the different conflicts or different time frames that we have to adhere to, we will be phasing in the project. And so there are 3 parts. There's program space for older adults. There's a new child development center, and finally there's the housing component. Many of you, a few of you have been through the facility, and so we rephrased it. And I'm going to stop and let Marcus walk you through this phased approach that we have initiated, and he can probably do it a lot more justice than I could, making it and clarifying it.
Thanks. Hi, Marcus. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so a little bit about myself, serving as owner's rep for a little over a year now with UMCH. So the initial concept of this project existed before I was a partner with them. But at the time I was engaged, it was a 92-unit apartment project. But as Eric said, just very, very highly complex. My experience in this town, I actually worked with Wolverine Building Group for 15 years doing a lot of affordable housing. And since then have worked with consultants or developers of all types, Magnus Capital Partners immediately before them. So to the point, a phenomenal project and one where affordable housing, which I'll focus on for the moment, is still a critical piece of it. And quite frankly, this update, this reallocation, if you want to call it that, actually strengthens our possibility for the housing component. One of the burdens as the project was originally conceived was the property value and the mortgage payoff, which can be taken care of with some of the other components of the capital stack here. So there's a lot of state and federal allocations. That's really what is driving this decision. That allows us to really focus on the existing building. I'm a champion of historic preservation, and that's really what we're focusing on here. That beautiful storefront facing Division Avenue is where we are allocating these funds. Whether it's relevant or not, the project also has county ARPA dollars, which were originally allocated to this programming component. So they have allowed us to tailor this to the more focused project. But as far as housing goes, we still have a 9% reservation for 46 units, which is half of the original. And that we are working through issues with that. That remains probably Plan A. But we're working for several months now on what that project is going to look like. But it's actually much stronger on the tail end of this first phase than it looks today. I'm sure within the RAP program, going to housing, a lot of those projects have dealt with these market challenges and interest rates and construction pricing and things like that. So that said, we're evaluating affordability in various ways, just prepared to be just nimble in the direction that this housing can go. But the property allows for a lot of different options. Quite frankly, the 92-unit concept isn't even off the table. It's just something we're going to have to be revisiting closer to the end of this year, is what exactly is that project going to look like. So we are anxious to break ground on this first phase in the next 5 months and have our design and development team really focusing on that. So this will go very quickly. It kind of has to with some of the HUD funds and state allocations. So happy to answer any questions from there.
Yeah, great, thank you. I know I've been over there and toured this site as well, and I know I speak for a number of my colleagues how excited we are to see this move forward. The entire project, not just the housing, but the community space as well, and some of the other components and programs that you're going to be able to bring into that space in this neighborhood. So I'm supportive of shifting the RAP dollars to the program component, but also continue to be really supportive about trying to get as many housing units as possible. I'd love to see the 92. Quite frankly, I was glad to see the LIHTC at 9%. So thank you for your continued work navigating these difficult times. Let me turn to my colleagues, see if they have questions or comments. Commissioner Robbins? Commissioner Isasi?
I would just echo what you said, Mayor. I think, we've seen the project before us a number of times, and I think, I also really appreciate the multi-generational approach of the project. And, thanks for the update today.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right. Thank
Mr.
you.
Robbins, we need to get you over.
I was just going to say, I'd love a tour.
Great.
That'd be great.
We'll work on it and have you soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
That would be
Thank
great.
you.
All right, Mr. Klusser, anything else?
Just to wrap that up quickly on the RAP program in general, so we do have a signed agreement. We've met the first milestone. Jess Solis has really been driving that work. So we've met our first milestone for all the projects with the strategic fund, Michigan Strategic Fund. At this point, we are in a holding pattern until they approve that milestone, but are working in the meantime to negotiate sub-grant agreements and get those ready to go as soon as we have the green light from the MEDC. We're pushing them along as fast as we can, trying to build the boat for them instead of vice versa. And then, as you know, the supplemental that was approved a couple months ago included another $100 million for RAP 2.0. We are aware that there has been a little bit of information out about that. There's a webinar in 2 weeks, which we'll participate in. The applications will open in May, in early May, and be due in June, and then awards in the fall. So we are obviously tracking that closely and intend to, evaluate the changes that may be present between RAP 1.0 and RAP 2.0, but we'll obviously be paying close attention and looking to take advantage of that opportunity as well.
Yeah, great, thank you. All right, and then finally, we have, just real briefly, our Development Center report. I think we've all had a chance to look at that. I'll just see if there's anything you want to draw our attention to.
At this time, just given respect for your time, and I'll just say that we are trending above average right now for this year in development, both in construction value and application workload, and I'll just open it up to any questions on the list at this time, if there are any.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm glad to see that. Commissioners, any questions? All right, appreciate the report. I know I was able to read through it, and it's good to see that kind of activity.
Great, thank
Yeah, all right. I'm going to go ahead and close this Economic Development Project Team meeting then. Commissioners, that should give you a little bit of break, and I'll see you back in here at 2 p.m.